Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Genius Knowledge Point, your go-to place for practical programming solutions for diploma, computer and IT students. If you are stuck on any practical assignment or just want to learn how to solve programs step by step, then you are in the right place. The main purpose of making this video is to provide practical knowledge to all diploma students so that they can develop their own programs which will be helpful for their future. In today's video, we are going to see practical number 3 of object-oriented programming practicals for K-Scheme, and that is for third semester. So the third practical is to demonstrate use of implicit and explicit typecasting. So first we need to understand what is typecasting. So as we know, there are different data types in C programming and C++ programming. So to convert from one data type to another data type, we have to use something that is called typecasting. So for example, if I have an integer variable that is int I is equal to 50, that is this integer variable I is storing value 50. Then if I want to store that I variable into float value, that is float f is equal to I, then what it will do, it will store the value inside I to f. So the float value will become 50.00 because it is having a float data type. So the value will be stored as 50.00. Similarly, if I have float x is equal to 72.33, that is a float value, and I want to store it into an integer variable, that is int y is equal to x, then what it will store, it will convert that y is equal to 72 only, because as y is integer data type, so it will not store a fractional part, so it will store only integer part, that is 72. So if you want to convert from float to integer, or integer to float, or double to integer, integer to double, then in that case you need to use typecasting. So that is the concept behind this practical. Let us see how to do this typecasting on your program. So the first question is, find the area of rectangle by casting double data into float and integer type. So we have to accept data into double variable, and we have to calculate the area into float and integer data type. So let us see what is needed to develop this program. What are the requirements? So as we are calculating area of rectangle, we need two variables, that is length and width. So I will be using them as L and W. So these are my double variables. Then next, one float variable to store area into float format. So as we have to convert this area into float and integer, so we need one float variable so that we can store that area into float format. Then similarly, we can use one more variable, that is integer variable, to store that area into integer format. So I will be storing that into area underscore int. Then I have to calculate the area using typecasting and display that area. So that will be the structure of this program. Let us move to the coding part and let us see how to do typecasting there. So this is the code for calculation of area. Initially we need header files, that is iostream.h and conio.h. Then I will start the main function. So instead of void main, you can also use int main. The return type will become integer only, and finally you have to return something, that is return space 0. So initially while starting, I am declaring two double variables, that is length and width, L and W. Then I am creating a float variable to store area inside a float value. Then I am declaring integer variable to store area into integer format. Then I am putting just a message, enter the length of rectangle, and I am accepting into L. Similarly, I am accepting the W also. So length and width are accepted. Next part is calculation of area, but we have to calculate this area into two formats, that is one float format and one integer format. So while calculation of area, the area will be product of two double values, that is L and W. So the final answer will be double value. but I don't want that into double format. I want it into float format. So I will be using typecasting. So how I have done typecasting here, I have done this, that is inside a bracket I have put float. So what it will do, whatever is in front of this float, it will be converted into float. So L into W, that is the product of L and W, that will be the double value, and that double value will be converted into float value, and it will be assigned into area underscore float. So what it will what this statement will do, it will convert this double area into float format and it will store it into area underscore float. So this is how I am storing my area into float format. Similarly, I am doing this for integer format. I am calculating L into W, that is the double value. I am putting int inside round brackets before that. So this double value will be converted into int and that will be stored into area underscore int. So it will be integer format. And finally, I am just putting both the values, that is area in float, and I am printing just both the values and attaching end L. And finally, get ch is there to end the program, and curly bracket close. So this is how the program is ended. Just I am selecting it, then I am going to Golang C++ compiler, pasting all the code here, then going to debug and run. So enter the length of rectangle. You need to remember that our length and width values are in double format, so we have to put double values here. So 89 point anything I am putting. So enter the width of rectangle. So I am just putting any double value. So you can see area in float format is calculated as 1839.69 and area in int is calculated as 1839. So you can see here, while converting into integer format, it has not printed the fractional part, it has printed only integer part. So this is how we have converted double value into integer and double value into float. So this completes your first question. Now moving to the next question, that is write a program which show the use of implicit typecasting to calculate the average of two numbers. So we have to use implicit typecasting here. So basically there are two typecastings we have in this program, that is implicit typecasting and explicit typecasting. In the previous example, what we have done it using explicit typecasting, that is the user defined typecasting is called explicit typecasting. Whenever the typecasting is done by user, that is called explicit typecasting, and whenever the typecasting is done by compiler, that is called implicit typecasting. So in this example we are going to use implicit typecasting. So that is, we are going to use typecasting that is done by compiler, we are not using by ourselves. So that is this program. So let's see what is needed to develop this program. So initially we need two numbers, that is I am assuming as num1 and num2. So basically we have to calculate the average of two numbers. So we need two numbers, then we have to calculate the average. So the data type of average will be float data type, because whenever we are calculating average, it may have fractional part. So that's why we need one float variable to store average. So I am assuming it as average or any variable name. Then the third part, calculation of average using implicit typecasting and display it. So we have to calculate the average and we have to use this implicit typecasting here, and we have to display that output, that is the value of average. So let us move to the coding part. If you see, the initial part is same, that is header files, then main function. I'm directly moving to the declaration part, that is declaration of two numbers, num1 and num2, and that the data type will be integer format. Then to calculate average, I am taking float average variable, and I am just putting some messages, that is enter first number, accepting them in num1, enter second number, accepting it into num2, then I'm calculating average. So this is my formula for average. So in this formula, the right hand side is not having any float or int like we done in this first question. So that's why it is having implicit typecasting. So how we are doing implicit typecasting? We are first adding number 1 and num2, so that is addition of both numbers, and that addition we are dividing it by 2.0. So the 2.0 is float number, so addition of this num1 and num2 will be integer value, and that integer will be divided by 2.0, that is float value. So whenever an integer is divided by float, the answer will be float value, and that answer is generated by compiler. We are not forcing program to purposely convert that into float, so it will be automatically converted by compiler. So that's why it is called implicit typecasting, and that float value is stored into average, which is also a float variable. And finally I am just printing that average value, average is, and attaching average and get chs to end the program, and finally curly bracket closed. So just selecting all, copying it, going to Borland C++ compiler, removing this and pasting it here. So just go to debug and run to run this program. So the message is showing as enter the first number, so I am just putting any number, then second number. So the average is printed as 66.5, which is a float value. Even though we have provided integer numbers, the final average is printed as a float value because of typecasting is used here, and that typecasting is of type implicit typecasting. So this completes your second question. Similarly, the third question is there, that is calculate the average of two numbers using explicit typecasting. So both the questions are same, just the type of typecasting is changed here. So how to convert that into explicit typecasting? We will just remove this formula and replace it with explicit typecasting. So how to do that? We will just do this. So the same program is here. We have just added this part and added this float conversion. So this is called explicit typecasting. This is done by user. This is not done by compiler. So we are just adding two numbers and dividing them by 2. So now we are not dividing it by float value. We are dividing num1 plus num2, and that is divided by 2 only, that is integer number. So this integer divided by integer will become integer output, but I don't want that into integer format. I want it into float format. So what I will do, I will do explicit typecasting here, which we have done in the first question. So this integer part will be converted into float part, and that will be stored into average, which is a float variable. So finally the output will be float value, and finally I am just printing it, and the same program is here. So I am just copying all this code and going to compiler, then pasting it here, going to debug and run, then entering some values. It is first number as 78, second number as 89. Again the output is same, that is we got the average as a float value because we have converted this number, the average, into float format using typecasting. So this completes your second and third question. Now the next question is write a program which display the percentage of students which accept marks of 3 subjects from user. So the use of implicit typecasting. So in this question we have to accept marks for 3 subjects for a particular student, then we have to calculate percentage of those marks. So let us see how to develop this program. So what are the requirements? First, we have to accept three numbers, that is mark 1, mark 2 and mark 3. So these will be our variables to store marks values. Then the second is one float variable to store percent. So as the percentage value is in float format, so we need a percent variable as float variable. Then the third part is calculation of percent using typecasting and display that percent value. So this is the basic structure of this program. Let us move to the coding part. So if you see the code, initially we have to import header files, then we will start with the main function. So inside main function we are declaring three variables, that is mark 1, mark 2 and mark 3. These are integer data type. Then the percent variable is of float data type. Then I am just putting message to accept the marks values. So first one, enter the subject 1 marks, then I am accepting that mark value in cin. So the mark value will be stored in mark 1 variable. Similarly, I am accepting mark 2 and mark 3 variables. So all the three marks values are already accepted here. Then we have to calculate the percent. So the percent formula is addition of all marks into 100 divided by total marks. So the percent formula will become mark 1 plus mark 2 plus mark 3, that is addition. So I am putting bracket here, then into 100, and to put it as a complete numerator I am enclosing it into round brackets. So this is my numerator, and divided by 300.0. So this will be a float value because we have to use implicit typecasting. So using this 300.0, it will convert this division into float value and it will be stored into percent variable, which is a float variable. And finally I am putting a print statement, that is cout percent is, and I am attaching percent value here. And after that get ch to display the output screen, and finally closing the main function. So now I am copying it and going to your Borland C++, creating new file, pasting the complete code here, and I will go to debug and run this program. So after running, the message is displayed as enter subject 1 mark. So I am just putting random values. First one is 78, then 89, then 56. So if you see, the percent is calculated as 74.3333. So this is the float value which is converted from implicit typecasting. This completes your practical related question, and the third practical is also completed here. So that's it for today's practical. I hope this helped you understand the solution clearly. Code for this practical is available at the link given in the description. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel for more such diploma level programming solutions. If you have any doubts or need solutions for other programs, drop a comment below. I will be happy to help. And hit the bell icon so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching and happy coding.